is coming to save us. We need one thing. We need a political revolution.
Graham Platner was a political unknown less than a year ago. He's a military combat veteran and an oyster farmer who's vaulted to the front of Maine's Senate race, riding on a populist message. And he's done it entirely outside the party's establishment, handpicked by a group of independent activists who are promoting a new type of candidate.
I mean, we want people who didn't run for student council, right? We want people who have not been spending their entire lives planning their ascent to political power.
But a string of controversies have triggered questions over whether Platner was thoroughly vetted before entering the race, and the stakes couldn't be higher for Democrats. Maine is a must-win state for the party to take control of the Senate, and their chances now depend on an untested and contentious newcomer. When you wake up in the morning, what do you worry about?
Everything. I mean, the biggest thing, I do not want to screw this up.
We first caught up with Platner in March. At that point, he was far outraising the state's governor, Janet Mills, and was ahead in the polls. How did you get from sitting in your kitchen, never having run for office before, to being this candidate now?
I think it's because I'm just saying the thing out loud that everybody already knew. I'm just putting voice to a feeling that many of us have had for a very long time. And that is the feeling that we have a political system and an economic system that does not benefit the average person.
It was only last August when Platner appeared seemingly out of nowhere. He made his debut at a big rally for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who is one of his earliest supporters.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next senator from the state of Maine, Graham Platner.
That looked like the first time you spoke to a big audience.
There was. There was a crowd of 7,000 people.
It wasn't long after Platner launched his campaign that his controversial past threatened to derail it completely. Writing under the username P. Hustle, Platner mocked rural Americans, promoted racist stereotypes, and suggested that some assault victims should bear responsibility. Platner apologized for the posts and said that many of them came during a difficult time after he returned from Iraq. Then came revelations about a chest tattoo from his military service that resembled a symbol adopted by the Nazi SS.
I have gone and gotten it covered up.
Platner publicly said that he had been unaware of the connection. I'm on my way now to see Dan Moraff and Leanne Fan. They're the two kind of itinerant activists who came from out of state and found Graham Platner. They have forced the governor of the state out of the race, and now the Democratic Party is going to run against Susan Collins with their selection for nominee.
Hi, Aaron.
Leanne. Despite Platner's surprising ascent in Maine, little is known about the couple themselves, who agreed to sit down with us for their first extensive interview. What was it like the day that you learned that Janet Mills was dropping out?
Oh my God.
I had a law school final in like 5 minutes after I heard.
It was crazy.
One with no phones allowed, so.
Leanne, Dan has been running a number of campaigns, including Graham Platner. At the same time, he's been a Yale law student. How, really?
Yeah, really. I've seen his transcript. I attended his graduation.
Platner isn't the first candidate the couple has on its roster. They first met while working on Sanders' presidential campaign in 2020. By that point, Moraff had already led a progressive Democrat, Summer Lee, to win a state house seat in Pittsburgh, and Lee went on to become a member of Congress. Then they set their sights on Nebraska, where they recruited Dan Osborne, an independent, to run for the Senate in 2024. Despite losing against Republican Deb Fischer, Osborne came within a historically slim margin, and now he's running again this year against another incumbent, Pete Ricketts. What do you look for in a candidate? What do you think makes a successful candidate?
Somebody who feels authentically reflects the culture of the district that they come from. It astounds me how many Democratic candidates are recent transplants to their districts, and that they have, appointed themselves the right kind of person to run in that district.
I think a healthy contempt for existing Democratic Party infrastructure is really essential. That infrastructure does really horrible things to candidates and to campaigns. And
What do you mean by that?
there's this whole world of people who've built careers out of the Democratic Party and its ecosystem, and who put out the kind of campaigns where a normal person can look at it and say, this looks and sounds like shit.
How did you come to decide to come to Maine, and why Maine?
God, well, I mean, I think it was the spring of 2025, and, Susan Collins is an establishment politician who's been there forever, and it's very easy to hold her accountable for the problems that we face, unless we run somebody who is even more an establishment politician and even more responsible for the problems we face.
How did you find Graham Platner?
Well, so, we went through thousands and thousands of prospects. We, through a number of means, assessed just a huge amount of people. Then, Leanne pulled up this video of this guy with an oyster farm.
My name is Graham Platner, and I live in Sullivan, Maine, the owner of Frenchman Bay Oyster Company.
And then she pulled up his FEC history and saw, the money he'd given to Bernie Sanders and, some other people. And that was enough information to know that we had the best prospect that we'd maybe ever seen.
At this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Platner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back, other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was your
Clearly the
thinking
voters
there?
agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look and sound like the vat-grown people who've been leading this country off a cliff for the last century. And that was Graham.
Just days after this interview, more details about Platner's past emerged. The Journal reported that his wife, Amy, had alerted the campaign to sexually explicit texts that he had exchanged with several women earlier in their marriage. And shortly after that, the New York Times reported that some women who previously dated Platner recalled unsettling behavior during their relationship. Platner told the Journal in a statement that he had been far from a perfect boyfriend, but that any characterization beyond that is false. And when we followed up after these additional reports to ask Moraff whether he and his partners had sufficiently investigated Platner, Moraff told us, "We will let the people of Maine decide." What did you present to Graham to build his confidence that you really could build a campaign around him?
We told him we'd raise his first $1 million. We told him we'd surround him with competence and people who were doing it for the right reasons.
One of those people was Morris Katz. He met Platner shortly after Moraff and Fan discovered him, and he worked with the pair through the vetting process. Together, they've recruited and advised a number of other working-class candidates, including firefighters in Wisconsin and Washington, and iron workers in Ohio and Oklahoma.
That one job was enough to support a family of 8.
Katz built his reputation with viral ads that helped boost Zoran Mamdani from 1% name recognition to the New York City mayor's office.
Will you accept this rose?
Val,
Can you grab me my Zins, please? They're next to where I was sitting down.
Morris, Charlie, this is the ad that put Graham Platner on the map. Let's take a look.
Oh, even in a place that requires you to work like 2 or 3 different jobs, we have watched this state become essentially unlivable for working class people, and it makes me deeply angry.
What audience did you think about when you created this? Who were you speaking to?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a progressive agenda as much as a populist agenda. And it's a kind of a common sense approach to addressing a historic income inequality crisis.
Your bio on the Fight Agency website says you're always looking for non-traditional candidates who are willing to take on tough fights. What do you mean by non-traditional candidates? What are you looking for?
I always said that I think one of the biggest red flags possible is someone who wants to run for office. And if you want to run for office because you think you and you alone can solve the problems we face, then you probably are not someone who should be in the halls of power. I like candidates who feel like they need to run for office out of a deep obligation to their community, to people like them, out of a deep anger that I can't stand by any longer while this happens to the people I love and to the place I love.
How did you go about vetting Graham Platner, and how do you vet the candidates that you pick, given that they're newcomers?
I mean, we have a formal vetting process that candidates go through. You know, no vetting process is going to always catch everything, but we take the vet seriously. I think there is a different barrier inherent, and if you believe that the only people who should be able to run for office are people who've planned it their entire lives, then that is one kind of vetting standard. If you believe that we should have people who never before thought they'd run for office, but who want to step up for their communities, who want to serve, whether they be a harbor master or an iron worker, they're going to have said, like anyone else, they will have said things that they will have regretted. Broader for our politics, I think it's incoherent to believe that, you know, how many think pieces have been written about how do we win back angry young men, and we have someone who was one of them and who made it out the other side, who's uniquely equipped to bring them back into our fold. And the idea that we should dismiss them or that's disqualifying, I think is, you know, that doesn't quite make sense with the way we talk about who we want to be as a party and how we want to expand our coalition.
The Senate race in Maine is the one that Democrats are best positioned to win. You've put the party in a position where they're really rolling the dice on someone who's new and untested and has this background that some people find objectionable. Why is this a good bet for the Democratic Party?
To me, there is the biggest risk the Democratic Party can take is continuing to do things the same way it's done, that have ended us with a House minority, a Senate minority, and a second term of Donald Trump. And I think we cannot be the party that is the party of the establishment, the party of the institutions, you know, constantly in the position of, hey, we know you're being screwed by everyone in power, but let us just tinker around the edges there, and eventually it will get better. That is not it. That's an incoherent electoral strategy, and it's failed to actually make things better to the degree they need to get better. And so I think there's far less risk in running someone like Graham Platner than in running the same playbook.
Thank you very much.
Okay. What's it been like for you to go through this whole experience?
You know, it's people ask me this all the time, and the answer is it is so surreal and so disconnected from the life Amy and I were living before August of last year that in many ways we just kind of disassociate from it. Like, we know it's happening. We know it's big.
Partly because you're new, everyone's picking through your life.
Yeah.
The Reddit posts, your time in the military, your time in Washington. A lot of what your opponents are focusing on comes from what you posted while you were in Washington.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that time? You've called that a dark period.
Yeah.
What was your life like when you were coming back from the military?
I mean, I got out of the service in 2012. Immediately, I was in college, going to George Washington on the GI Bill. And I was, quite honestly, very isolated, very alone, very disillusioned, especially after my last deployment to Afghanistan, and suffering from, I mean, frankly, the outcomes of post-traumatic stress disorder, which for me manifested primarily in depression and anxiety. I spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure out ways to just feel connected to people, but while also being really angry at society in general.
That anger came out in your Reddit
Well,
posts.
which is why I went. That's why the internet was where I found a lot of that outlet.
And the people around you, did you ever do anything harmful to people around you? Did you treat
No.
the people in your life well?
Well, I mean, I certainly was a. Let's see. I mean, I would say I was not like the best romantic partner in the sense that like I was emotionally unavailable.
But not hurtful in another way. Bad
Oh God!
boyfriend
Oh
is one.
no! Oh, good Lord, no.
In your speech now, you say you want a political revolution.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I mean, we need to get money out of politics. We need to end partisan gerrymandering. We need to create a system in which entrenched political machines are not the arbiters of power, are not the choosers of who gets to be a candidate or who doesn't.
You're carrying the weight of the hopes and ambitions of the whole Democratic Party on your shoulders. This is a state they have to win.
Way to make it sound like there's no pressure.
Well, when you wake up in the morning, what do you worry about?
Everything. I mean, the biggest thing, like, I do not want to screw this up. Like, I don't want, and I don't mean in the sense that like I'm not gonna like do something that's gonna like end this. I firmly, I know what we're doing. I firmly believe in it. I'm gonna keep working towards it. There's an opportunity here. There's an opening for this kind of politics to really work, and I want it to work. And I want to make sure that all the choices that we make over the next few months moving towards the general, that I want them to be good choices.